Remote Evil. Book 1. Chapter 28. Dead of Night. This audiovisual book was created by Joseph Russell Tim Pugh Gyson. John Jr. suddenly collapsed to the ground. Cherry was shocked when she saw this and caught her completely off guard. She immediately rushed to him to try to see why he suddenly collapsed to the ground. When he turned his head, he saw that he has a gash on his head just above his forehead. He has been shot. This terrifying conclusion ran through her mind. She quickly took her gun and started pointing it in all directions of the dark night, trying to find and target the shooter of John Jr. Then she nervously looked up. There was nothing as well. She panicked. Could the attacker be invisible? She asked herself. Cold sweat started to run through her forehead in her panic. Then she noticed the small red light of a laser pointer in her chest. She looked up again and she saw a distant small red laser pointer light. It was the origin of the small red light that was targeted at her chest. She looked clearer in the sky, trying to concentrate on the small red laser pointer light that shone in the dark. She begins to see the dark silhouette of a drone. It was so much larger than the previous drone that attacked them before. It was nearly invisible in the dark too. She immediately concludes that it must be colored black and must also be camouflaged to almost appear invisible in the night. It was just like the first drone, which has stealth technology. That is why it was able to quietly sneak up on them. Even its guns were silent. She never heard the sounds of it firing its gun at John Jr. She realized that it could have shot her anytime it wanted without her knowing it, as well like what it did to John Jr. She could have been dead by now. Maybe her rapist wants her alive, not dead. This thought registers in her mind fast. She does not know if her rapist intentionally just missed killing John Jr. or if it was really trying to kill John Jr. but missed doing this for some reason. It must be very fast too. It was able to travel from its hiding place or from the hideout of the rapist and reach them immediately in the vicinity of the truck in the very wide clearing they are in. Then she heard an electronic voice. "Drop your gun and surrender or I will shoot you too," it said to her. She does not know what to do. She aims her gun at it. She will shoot it. She does not want to be taken alive by her rapist only to be enslaved by him again. This reality is unacceptable to her. She would rather die first rather than be captured and be enslaved again. Then the red laser pointer in her chest quickly traveled to the head of John Jr. and stayed there. "If you don't surrender, I will kill him," the drone shouted to her. She looked at the badly wounded John Jr. who was just lying beside his truck. He was still alive, she knows, but he was just lying on the ground and breathing with difficulty. He was also very much in pain with the gash in his head which was bleeding profusely. She made up her mind. She cannot let another person die because of her. She has already caused the death of this man's father. She dropped her gun while tears filled her eyes. "Stand up," the drone commanded her in an angry tone. She followed. She stood up and tried to face the almost invisible drone in the dark of night. Then suddenly the beam lights of the drone lighted up. It almost blinded her. "Now you see that there is no escape for you, bitch. You are my bitch forever," the drone mockingly shouted at her. She was angry. Her eyes welled with more tears. "The asshole has won," she shouted angrily at herself. But she cannot do anything. If she tries to fight or disobey her rapist, he will kill John Jr. She looked at John Jr. one more time. He was just still lying on the ground motionless, but she noticed that he was looking at her straight in the eye. He was still conscious and he seems to be trying to tell her something. "Look at me, bitch," the drone shouted at her as it tries to prevent her from looking at John Jr. She looked at the drone straight in the eye while using her hand to cover her eyes from the blinding beam lights of the drone. "What do you want from me? Why can't you let me go? I haven't even seen you. I can't even report you to the police, so please let me go," she said to the drone in a pleading voice. She looked again quickly at John Jr. as if trying to also get his sympathy. Then she noticed that John Jr. was slowly and carefully trying to reach his rifle. She immediately understood what John Jr. is trying to do. He wants to surprise the drone and shoot it before it can shoot him. She quickly thinks of a way to distract the drone from possibly monitoring John Jr. She slowly and deliberately removes the bloodied shirt of John Jr. and strips provocatively in front of the bright beam lights of the drone. "I know you can see me. Why don't you show yourself to me?" She said this in a teasing voice to the drone. The drone was silent. She looked very hard beyond and away from the glaring beam lights of the drone. Then she sees, though not very clear, the many cameras that are attached to the drone. She thinks fast and starts to touch herself while not taking her eyes off the many cameras attached to the drone. "Come see me. Fly lower. You want to see me, right?" she seductively said to the drone. She was outwardly trying to convince the drone that she has completely surrendered and was giving herself away to her rapist, but inside herself she was trying desperately to keep her mind and wits together. She was very scared that her rapist will see through her tricks and just kill her immediately. Then she noticed the drone fly nearer to her as if it was trying to see her more clearly. She makes a gamble. She thrusts her lower body deliberately forward, letting the drone see her lower body more clearly. She stayed in this position as if offering herself sexually to the drone. The drone flies nearer to her to get a more clearer view of her lower body. It flew nearer and nearer to her until it was approximately less than 5 feet from her, as if it was trying to touch her already. She can see its big outline more clearly now. It was slowly but surely getting closer and closer to her. It was almost touching her now. Then the drone shook and trembled as she heard multiple shots being fired. It was John Jr. He was able to reach his rifle while still lying on the ground and used it to shoot the drone continuously without stopping. The drone flew up very quickly. She noticed it seems to be slightly damaged, but it is still working. She also reached for her gun and joined John Jr. in shooting the drone. Then the very bright beam lights of the drone were suddenly turned off and the drone seemed to disappear into the night. John Jr. crawled inside the bottom of his truck. Cherry tried to follow him, but she hears the sounds of bullets piercing metal. She knows without seeing it that the drone is now trying to shoot John Jr., who was now hidden at the bottom of his truck. She stopped on her tracks and quickly reverses and ran towards the opposite direction. A bullet grazed her shoulder. She crashes to the ground, rolling in pain. More shots were fired at her, but her crashing and rolling motion luckily prevented her from being hit by more bullets. She quickly touches the part of her shoulder where the bullet grazed her while continuing to run in a random pattern in an effort to confuse the drone and make it unable to target her accurately. She felt the blood coming out of her bullet wound. Her hidden anger was suddenly unleashed. In her anger she fired back into the night sky blindly. She was not aiming at the drone. She was just so angry at her situation and just wanted to release her pent-up rage. Then she saw a spark in the night sky. "I have hit the drone," she shouted to herself in an almost evil delight. She quickly fired more shots to the direction where she first saw the spark. More sparks soon followed. She never stopped firing at the location of the sparks that she clearly knows is the location of the nearly invisible at night drone. The drone was nearly invisible at night before, but the sparks now give her a clue where it was, no matter how dark the night was. Then the gun suddenly stopped firing, and no matter how many times she pressed the trigger it still won't fire. She was out of bullets. This she realized. She panicked. A bullet hit her in the stomach. The impact of the shot on her stomach caused her to quickly collapse backward into the ground. She can see from her lying position the sparks that were flying out of the drone. She knows the drone was still flying nearer and nearer her. Her bullet wounds, especially in the stomach, were very painful and made her weak that she can barely move. She cursed the drone non-stop. She would not go down without a fight. She may be dying, but she still wants to fight. Her eyes were starting to close. Her wounds were starting to have an effect on her. She was getting weaker and weaker fast. She is by now just waiting to die. Then she heard gunshots. She opened her eyes to see the sparking silhouette of the drone moving erratically. She heard more shots. Then she heard the shout of John Jr. "Die! Die! You beast!" He repeatedly shouted "Die!" as he continually shot the drone non-stop. He continuously fired while still hiding at the bottom of his truck. Cherry has created enough of a diversion for him to get all the bullet cartridges in his bag and align them near him so that he could replace the empty bullet cartridges in his rifle almost non-stop. The drone quickly moved away from Cherry and started going nearer and nearer John Jr. while it tried to shoot and kill him. If John Jr. had not carefully hidden himself at the bottom of his truck, the drone would have easily targeted him accurately and would have killed him by now. But John Jr. is pinned down on his truck and is now finding it difficult to shoot at the drone without exposing himself to the drone to be shot at by it. Cherry is seeing everything that is happening. It won't go down. She angrily shouted to herself. It was like a small flying tank. She quickly realized this. The drone has been firing erratically at the truck trying to hit John Jr. It must be damaged. It is still flying, but it does not seem to be flying smoothly. It can't even shoot at John accurately. These were her thoughts based on what she is seeing around her with regards to the drone. She was fed up that her rapist seems to be unstoppable. He keeps hurting and killing everyone she knows. She knows that if she does not stop him now, he will continue hunting and harming her on and on. Something finally snapped inside her brain. As if something dangerous and primitive was awakened inside her. She without thinking breathed heavily and concentrated very hard to regain her strength. She stopped thinking about the pain from her bullet wounds. This was her final stand. Her athletic body, which won her the triathlon championship, quickly responded. She stood up and with all her might ran towards the drone, which was busy trying to kill John Jr. The drone was flying so low now in an effort to reach John Jr., who was still holed up at the bottom of his truck and shooting at the drone any chance he gets. She ran until she was just a few feet from the drone. Then she jumped on it and clung to it hard. Her weight pulled down the drone very near the ground. Her feet touched the ground while she solidly clung to the drone. Then, still unthinking, she used the ground as a springboard to leap to nearly the top of the drone. She rode the drone while trying to keep her balance as the drone swung from side to side as it tries to maintain its balance, which was out of control now because the weight of Cherry was fast pulling it down uncontrollably. While she rode the drone, she started pulling out parts of the drone that she can remove from it. John Jr. came out of the bottom of the truck where he was hiding. He dropped his gun, took a large rock and started using it to smash the cameras of the drone. The drone continued firing its gun, but it did not hit John Jr. anymore. Its gun, which is located near its bottom, is almost touching the ground. The bullets just hit the ground. John Jr. also realized it and continued to smash the drone randomly while still carefully avoiding being targeted by its gun. But he was unlucky. The drone was still able to land a bullet near one of the ankles of his feet. He quickly collapsed to the ground, grimacing in pain while holding his wounded ankle. Cherry saw this. As if driven mad by what she saw, she shouted a fearsome war cry. Ha! 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 She shouted this over and over. She decided to pull out the open live wires which were still sparking. She touched the live wires. She shouted in pain as she felt the electrical shock running throughout her body. Then she remembered all the electric shocks she received from her rapist whenever he uses the many shock collars attached to her body to electrocute her. She was able to withstand and resist for a long time the electric shocks from all the shock collars attached in her body before, and she is determined to also withstand the electric shocks from the live wires she is holding right now. No matter how painful were the electric shocks she was feeling, she continued to hold on and tried to pull out the live wires from the drone. Then she lost her balance and fell backwards to the ground and away from the top of the drone. She felt her back hit the ground hard. Her strength has left her. She has given it her all and she is fully exhausted by now. Everything was silent. She managed to regain a small amount of strength and looked at the drone. It had crashed to the ground. A few small parts were still moving, lighting up and sparking, but in general it has stopped moving almost completely. She wonders if she was successful in stopping it. She feared it may soon move again. She gets ready to fight one more time. She was able to stop it and she wants to make sure it does not move again. Blood continues to come out from her wounds, but she does not care. The cold night sends shivers to her naked body, but she does not care. She tried to lift the rock that John Jr. used to smash the drone. It was too heavy for her and she can't move the rock as well. Here, use this. It was the voice of John Jr. He was slouched to the ground but held his rifle straight at Cherry, giving it to her. Cherry slowly took the gun from John Jr. She studied the drone. It seems to have either armor plating or bulletproof coverings, or have some kind of feature that lets it become extremely resistant to attacks. She studied it. Then she saw a small opening which revealed electronic parts, and some of it were lighted up. Then she saw more sparks inside and also saw that there were parts that were already starting to burn. She looked at the rifle in her hand. She thinks that the rifle can only do limited damage to the drone. The drone begins to move slowly again. It is preparing to fly again. The thought terrorized Cherry. She looked at the rifle in her hand once again. Then she took out the bullets from the rifle and dropped them in the parts of the drone which were on fire. The drone continued to move. Its propellers started moving again. Cherry just stared blankly at the drone as if waiting for it to fly again. The drone lifted itself approximately 1 feet from the ground. Cherry readied herself to use the rifle to hit the drone. Then she heard gunshots from inside the drone. Then suddenly a big black smoke came out from inside the drone. Then a big fire came out from inside the drone this time. It made a loud engine noise before crashing to the ground. It continued to shook while the fire enveloped it almost completely. Cherry kneeled on the ground. She was still ready to hit the drone with the rifle in case it moved again. It might be burning up, but she is not taking away her eyes from it. John Jr. has been looking at her for quite a while now. He realized that she has ran berserk and her mind was only still fixed now on destroying the drone. She is not clearly thinking anymore. Cherry. Cherry, he called out gently to her repeatedly. She does not seem to hear him. She just stares blankly at the burning drone with the rifle in her hand, ready to use it to hit the drone. Cherry. Cherry. Snap out of it. He shouted at Cherry. Cherry seems to have heard him and dropped the rifle. Lift me up. He commanded her. She blankly follows him and lifted him up. Both are very weak now from all their wounds and from the battle with the drone. They weakly struggled to board the truck. When both were seated in the truck, John Jr. used the last of his first aid kit to cover the bullet wound in her stomach. He took out a bottle of alcohol from his glove compartment and drank some of it, then gave the rest to Cherry. Cherry was not used to drinking alcohol and it had a quick effect on her. It managed to numb the pain she was feeling. Can you still drive? He asked her. Yes. She firmly replied. Then she started his truck. She looked at the burning wreck of the drone one last time before finally driving to the town with John Jr. giving her the directions to the town while she drives. End of chapter.